Hi folks, John Dunn here, RPG freelancer, publisher behind Meliorvia. I am up here today at Immortals Inc. with Mikey.
Hey John, how is it going?
I thought maybe we'd explore a bit today, Mikey.
We have to explore. It's been too long.
We have not touched any strange new worlds in a time.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. What we're getting at is store just got our copies of Star Trek Adventures 2nd Edition in. It's been a minute, but we did talk about the 1st edition one probably, 2+ years ago.
We did. It's
back
up there
in the
somewhere.
old room, but yeah. And we've talked about a few other supplements for it. I know we talked about the Klingon book at least.
Yeah, we did.
Right? And I think we might have talked about Lower Decks too.
We did.
All right. So the lead on this one is Jim Johnson. He's the project manager. He's had many other Star Trek credits, and I think we have talked about him previously when we were talking about some of those other Modifius products. And there was a big team of folks involved. Not surprising since it's the 2nd edition. And there's going to be some work that was incorporated from other places in making this. Diving right into the book. It opens up with 8 pages that gives you kind of the overview of what is Star Trek, what is role-playing, and, what is the rest of this book about. Very straightforward. And then we get into a primer on Star Trek. That's going to be 29 pages, covers the different cultures and technology, the different civilizations, and what's really important here is it talks about the different eras of play. So if you want to adventure in Next Gen or Original Series or Enterprise or Discovery or Lower Decks, they've got hooks in here for that. So if your characters want to adventure in those different areas, different eras, that is immediately an option. From there, we get 21 pages on Starfleet. It talks about Starfleet's goals and philosophy, the first directive, how the organization basically is organized as a, diplomacy and scientific research organization rather than as primarily a military one, and touches on the Academy, where presumably most of the characters are going to have come from, assuming that is that you're playing a Starfleet-oriented campaign. And then it talks about how their missions are set up and what makes up an away team, right? So when the characters are beaming down to a planet, who's going to be there and why are they going to be part of that? From there, we get 20 pages of The Final Frontier, basically defining what different types of planets there are, a little bit of discussion on what constitutes a life form and what kind of life forms the characters might expect to encounter, stars and other anomalies where they might want to go and explore and maybe find strange new life or planets that have been previously unseen. And then we get into warp travel, alternate universes, and time travel. The last two being a little bit of a staple of the franchise, really, right?
Yeah.
From there, we have a pretty lengthy section, 91 pages of character creation. It starts out talking about attributes, and then we get into departments. So basically the different departments within Starfleet, assuming you're doing a Starfleet-focused campaign. Those were called disciplines in 1st edition. Then we get into focuses and values. From there, your character is going to generate a life path where they travel through their career, reach their rank, and so forth. And then we have our species. All the species from the 1st edition are included: Andorian, Bajoran, Betazoid, Denobulin, Human, Tellarite, Trill, and Vulcan. But then we also add in Einar, Cardassian, Ferengi, Klingon, Orion, Romulan as new options.
Okay.
And some of those are suited particularly to material that's come out since the 1st edition.
If you watched our Klingon review, you know
absolutely,
which one of those are.
That was covered, but also Orions. We've got a prominent Orion character in Lower Decks, which just wrapped up, so it makes sense to have that as an option here as well. Then there's a bit of a discussion about supporting characters. So if you're going to have multiple characters for each PC, maybe they need to have a supporting character, possibly a lower decker if their main character is one of the deck officers. And then we get into talents and character development. After that, there's 60 pages of Starship creation and development. So this is a cool part where the players are going to work together, probably with the GM, to design that starship that really is a central point of the campaign. And we get ship classes from different eras and from different organizations. So we've got Starfleet, Klingon, Romulan, Cardassian, and Ferengi ships. And then it discusses the different roles that ships have, whether it's an exploration vessel or maybe a military one or a medical frigate or just, whatever might be appropriate for the type of campaign that the group wants to play through. Then we have ship talents, weaponry, and small craft, like our shuttles, right, if we want to go down to the surface. Kind of a brief section after that, about 12 pages on technology and weapons. And then we get 25 pages of operations. And this is our game mechanics, where we talk about how the 2D20 system has kind of been refined since the first edition and new ways that it's going to be applied very specifically to this new iteration of the Star Trek franchise. We break things down into scenes, talk about tasks, momentum, determination, and threat. And then from there, it goes into challenges and extended tasks. And those are basically the more advanced rules. The things that maybe you're not necessarily going to be integrating into a campaign or rather an adventure when folks are just starting out, but that you might want to bring in as things further develop and everybody becomes a little more familiar with the system. After that, the next chapter is 40 pages on conflict, and this is essentially your combat rules, but it also gives you rules for social interactions, starship combat, and then more personal challenges that might come up. So the different scales of conflict that the characters might have to deal with. There's a dedicated Game Master chapter after that runs about 20 pages. I thought this was a really well-executed expression of how you want to organize your adventures, particularly how you want to organize an adventure and how you want that adventure to flow, to kind of reflect what we see in the TV series, right? So we want that adventure that the players are going through to kind of replicate the feel of a television episode. Maybe if you've got an adventure that runs multiple sessions, you might have a, to be continued moment, right, in between.
Cliffhanger.
Exactly. Or maybe you're doing a movie style one where the adventure is going to go have a bigger scope and just last a little bit longer. And then they do also discuss about how you want the rules to apply for particular scenes and particular elements of the adventure as it's developing. Conveniently, right after that, we do have a sample adventure that kind of gives you some insight into how those different elements that were just discussed can be applied. And this one's about 10 pages, and it does fit in with the Discovery timeline, kind of between Season 1 and Season 2. That follows on with 25 pages of allies and adversaries, and in here we see a section on NPC creation because your NPCs do not have to be created with quite the same level of exacting detail as your player characters. And honestly, they're set up to work maybe a little more efficiently from the Game Master's perspective, particularly given that you might be running quite a few NPCs in some of these encounters. And we get a range of different sample NPCs from different cultures and from different eras. Also, at this point, there's some sample starships and alien life forms. And importantly, among those alien life forms, we have the Tribble, that I'm betting you are familiar with. Tribbles? Oh, you've never seen the Trouble with Tribbles episode? Okay, well, we're going to have a discussion about that. Have you sit down and
Live
watch
review.
It is kind of one of the iconic original Star Trek episodes. And then we also have the Moopsie, which is from Lower
familiar.
Deck. We may have touched on that when we talked about Lower Deck.
Okay.
Moopsie is an adorable little creature that happens to suck bones.
Yeah, I think we did cover Moopsie maybe.
This is a 377-page hardcover. It is full color. It's published by Modifius. It is $65. We do have copies on the shelf here at Immortals Inc. and available online at immortalsinc.com. If you want to run a Trek campaign, this is the latest and greatest resource available to you, and it is flat out a gorgeous, well put together book.
Very well said, John. Latest and greatest indeed. Make sure you guys check everything out below if you want to buy it, and we'll see you guys next time.
Till next time, folks. Good gaming.